Talking all things Clemson Super Regional as the Florida Gators hit the road with a ticket to Omaha on the line. Helping us break it all down, our good friend joins the show, Nick De La Torre. He's a Florida Gators senior writer for Gators Online and On3 Sports and the co-host of Stadium and Gale, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things Florida Gators baseball and Gators in general. Nick, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's that time of year again. It's just weird to not be staying in Gainesville for a regional, super regional, which is typically what Florida does, but excited to see a new park.
So, Nick, I'm really excited to have you on, not just because of the obvious this weekend in Clemson, but what a fascinating season it's been for the Florida Gators. You finished the season one game of 500. This team needed to take 2 of 3 from Georgia just to even be in the conversation in the final regular season weekend. Not only do they do that, but they hear their name called on Selection Sunday. Maybe there's some controversy. Should Florida have been in? Not, whatever. Number one strength of schedule, I think, spoke for itself. The talent on this Florida ball club as well. Either way, they get in, and, Nick, they make the most of it in the Stillwater Regional, navigating through the losers bracket. Oklahoma State, Nebraska, Niagara, the teams had to beat Okie State twice, and Florida's able to do it. My friend, this goes even beyond just talking the Stillwater Regional. Like, what a wacky season this has been for a Florida Gators team that many of us, I think, picked to be in the national title hunt, maybe even win the national title, and now to be at this point. How do you put it into words, like what we've witnessed from the start of the season to now in Gainesville?
Well, hard to replace Wyatt Langford, Hurston Waldrip, BT Riopel, Brandon Sproat. I think Florida went young, which is typically what Kevin O'Sullivan does, how he's built his program, young on the mound. 11 of their 18 pitchers were freshmen, and they lost 3 of them before the year, including the Gatorade National Player of the Year, Christian Rodriguez, who's one of the most decorated high school arms in the state of Florida, I think, ever. So losing 3 guys before the season starts, kind of having to shuffle things around. Rodriguez was going to be the closer, Neely Friday starter, and then now you're moving pieces around. They just haven't been consistent. After they lost to Oklahoma State, I went back and looked. The last time Florida had won 3 games in a row was in February. So kind of just up and down, not being able to take and keep momentum, and a myriad of things. It became hard to even ask Kevin O'Sullivan questions after games because it was one of 5 things, and they just picked one to lose games. But to their credit, they fought back. I think Kentucky tried to lose that Friday night game, that first game. And like a kid on Christmas, Florida grabbed the present, shook it, thought socks, and said, no, thanks. Yeah, you can take that back. Probably should have beat Missouri. So there were so many games that one-run games, if you don't give up 6 runs in the 5th inning, or just a blow-up inning, that Florida – I think we'd be looking at them up there in the East rather than the 11th team in the SEC to make it in.
So you look back, Nick, at the Stillwater Regional specifically. Gators take down Nebraska in that game 1, lose to Oklahoma State game 2. The run that Florida went on out of the losers bracket, and I think what's so interesting, Nick, when I look at the Stillwater Regional is this. Like a lot of Florida struggles this year were due to pitching depth and lack thereof. And especially like when you look in the midweek, the reason, and it became like a running joke, Nick, of, well, Florida lost in the midweek again. Like, what is new? The sky is also blue today. So, Florida had those struggles. And then the reason they win the Stillwater Regional and the reason you win any regional is because you have pitching depth, especially when you come out of the losers bracket. What impressed you most? What were your major takeaways? And again, I mean, were you as surprised as maybe some of us were that Florida was able to navigate through that and win that regional?
Once they lost game 2. So I think game 2 is the most critical in a regional. If you lose game 1, game 2, you're fighting for your life. If you win game 1 and then win game 2, you only have to win 1 more game. If you lose, you have to run the table, and that requires a lot of pitching, which once Florida went down in game 2, I thought this is going to be tough. But to Florida's credit, I said, when you lose game 2, you kind of need a hero performance. And how about Brandon Neely coming out of the bullpen, 5 to third, 11 strikeouts. And then the guys they threw on Monday are freshmen who have struggled all year. Up and down, Jake Clemente. I think Fisher Jameson really stood out to me on the mound. Florida's really relied on him. He's a third-year guy who really hasn't touched a game mound much in his first 2 years, and they've really leaned on him in some leverage situations. So it took Florida playing to the potential, what we saw in the fall. And I think the frustrating part was the team I saw in the fall, I was like, oh, they can contend, and then struggled throughout the entire year. So I think we saw a little glimpse of what we saw in the fall, and maybe some freshmen growing up, especially Liam Peterson, who's been nails down the stretch here the last month of the season.
Nick, Gators and Clemson, Florida going on the road for the Clemson Super Regional. Reminder, this is a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, if necessary, Super Regional. 2 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. When you look at the Clemson Tigers, Nick, as we move into the upcoming weekend, a solid club, no doubt, top 8 national seed, top 60 in the country in average, top 30 in the country in home runs, and top 25 in the country in ERA. What stands out to you about Clemson, and what challenges do you think they present for Florida this weekend specifically?
Well, I think the big question was going into the year, how do you replace Billy Amick? And then you look and you've got Cam Canarello is hitting the hell out of the ball. And I think their lineup is deep, up and down. So they play good defense. They hit the ball. And then a freshman, in my opinion, came out of nowhere in Aiden Knack, if I'm saying that right. He's been sensational. And you have to go on the road, playing a hostile environment. So it will be a test for Florida. I think the big key for them is getting a quality start. A lot of Florida's issues also with the bullpen struggling is your starter only giving you 4 and then having to lean on it. So Florida can hit the ball, though. They'll hit it out of the yard. I thought when they got to Stillwater, I said, listen, they have a lot of sins, but home runs make up for those. And I think it played out a little bit that way. So it'll be interesting. Florida, I think when they play their brand of baseball, can play with anybody. It's just we don't know if we're going to see it on a day in, day out basis.
Nick, what's the vibe of not just the fan base, but this program going into this weekend? Because, again, Florida expects to win, right? Florida expected to be in Omaha this year. But is there also, too, like a we have nothing to lose kind of mentality? Or is there more pressure of, hey, if we don't win this weekend, like the season was already lackluster, like let's get back to where we're supposed to be? Like, what's the overall vibe? Because I'm sure there's some kind of mixed emotions going into this weekend in Clemson.
I think I saw a change after Brandon Neely's performance. And so much of the year, I felt like Florida played tight, almost played like they were afraid to lose. And a couple of the guys said it after the games in Stillwater, the last 2 games. And I think just looking at the body language in the dugout, it looked like they felt like they had nothing to lose and they were just playing and having fun. So I think that's kind of the attitude. A lot of people were saying Florida shouldn't have gotten in, and now they're in a super regional. So I think they hear that, they read that, and they definitely have a more loose and relaxed mentality inside the clubhouse right now.
Do you think they're using that as fuel to the fire, Nick, to make a postseason run, feeling like, hey, people didn't even think we should be here? And I mean, you know how talented the club is, right? But do you feel like that's something they're using as a fuel to the fire to maybe spark a run to Omaha or even further?
Yeah. I mean, listen, guys at this level use anything they can. I remember a couple of years back, it was either Nick Saban or Kirby Smart had like a piece of notebook paper that was like, nobody believes in Alabama. It's like, no one said that. That's not a real quote. You just made that up. So guys at this level find anything. And for sure, I think Florida knows how good they can be. We're talking about a team that beat LSU on the road, beat Texas A&M. It was just, for whatever reason, the consistency throughout the year. But right now, all you have to do is win a best of 3.
Nick, Jack Caglione leading the Gators into Clemson this weekend. What's the X factor for you for Florida? Maybe a key player. Is it Jack Caglione as Florida looks to punch their ticket to Omaha?
That's an easy one. That's probably the low-hanging fruit there with Jack. He's been a really fun player to watch, but you need guys around him. I think the emergence of Ashton Wilson has been a great story for Florida. Coastal Carolina transferred, doesn't really play, had 6 at-bats in the regular season, and was named the Stillwater Regional MVP. They moved him from 6 to behind Jack in the lineup to give him a little protection. So I think Florida needs to the X factor for me will be quality starts. You got one in game 1 in Stillwater from Liam Peterson, and that game played out well. You didn't get one from Jack Caglione in game 2, and you lost. So I think Ashton Wilson, continue this Disney storybook ride that you're on, and Florida's front end starters need to give them quality starts.
Nick, I'll ask you simply put, because I think what's interesting is we get into the postseason, a new season begins, right? Like whatever you did in the regular season record, that's all out the window. We know how talented this Florida team is. Do you think this team, the preseason expectation was national championship? Do you think they're still capable of achieving that?
I don't know. I mean, we're talking about a team that lost Ty Evans, probably their second best hitter behind Jack Caglione against Kentucky the second to last weekend. His replacement, Hayden Yost, tears his ACL the Wednesday before the Georgia series. So it's a team that's had to deal with a bunch of injuries. But I always say the 2017 team that won the national championship was one of the worst teams, Kevin O'Sullivan, if you just look at the numbers that he brought to Omaha, and they won it all. They had some elite pitching with Alex Faedo, Brady Singer, Jackson Torre, though. Anything can happen. Once a team gets hot, I think back to 2022 with Ole Miss, don't let the Rebs get hot. I think they were the 64th team to make it into the tournament. Once you start playing with a little confidence, I think success kind of can snowball. So yeah, if Florida can get through Clemson, I think they could be a dangerous team.
Nick De La Torre, again, one of the best in the business when it comes to covering the Gators for Gators Online, the co-host of Stadium and Gale as well. Nick, enjoy the weekend in Clemson, my friend. Appreciate you taking the time. We'll definitely do this again soon.